Great to see you, Ramley. Every Rams win means another episode of Between the Horns, presented by your Southern California Toyota dealers. Off to Philadelphia for the divisional round with Stu Jackson, DeMarco Farr. I am JB Long. We're still thinking of those of you who have become victims of these firestorms. What are you doing there, DeMarco?
Looking for your chocolate?
We'll get
Sorry,
there.
go ahead.
We'll get there. But we want to reflect on a whole lot of things. The triumph on Monday, the opportunity ahead in these 2024 playoffs. But good to see you guys. That was quite a memory that the team made and really the organization made in Arizona.
I was thinking on the way over, it might be right at the top of just most pride-swelling moments of my life to be involved in something like that. It was sobering to think the game got moved and why we were in Arizona, but then the work that went into getting everybody down there and then the team backing it up with a dominant victory. Just one of the special moments on this side of the fence as a broadcaster for a football team.
Yeah, it wasn't the first time, obviously, this organization has dealt with the impact of wildfires, but what really struck me was just how quickly everybody mobilized and put a plan in place and sprung into action with basically a third less time and not as many plans in place as far as in 2018, like Colorado Springs, like all that, like you guys can probably test it better than I can, but like that was already planned as far as practicing out there and things like that. Like it was not planned that last week until the game was obviously forced to be relocated, that it would be at the Cardinals facility. But kind of the same as you, DeMarco, just like a lot of pride. And I was almost like choking back tears at the end of the game because just not only for everything to work out the way it did, but also just the result and just the way that the display that the team, or the performance the team, I should say, had, especially that pass rush. I mean, it was
inspiring.
It really inspiring.
It really was
cool.
inspiring.
And I know those sentiments, those emotions for me and for you were not just about joy for Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and the players and the coaches who won, but so many, and we'll resist the urge to drop names here because inevitably we'll forget someone who shouldn't be forgotten. But I think we all agree we were cheering for and happy for a lot of people with the Rams who don't wear pads or helmets.
Oh, yeah.
That won that game before it was even played, right?
Well said.
That was an organizational triumph before it was a win in a wild card game. And look, if you were able to be there, thank you so much.
Yes.
And we're so happy for you to have made that Rams memory. If you wanted to be there but could not, hope you had a great game watch or listen, however you ingested that one. You were there with us in spirit. And especially if you were planning to be at SoFi Stadium but were robbed of that opportunity because of this natural disaster, I'm sorry, our hearts go out for you. Obviously, we all wanted that. And who knows, maybe the stars will align that we'll have one more get-together at SoFi Stadium before this is all said and done.
That'd be fun. I wanted to go back on one of those buses, though. That had to be one cool trip.
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't think I've heard enough stories about what that round trip was like. They're probably still sleeping it off.
I thought there'd be video, something. I'm sure the ride back was a lot more fun than the ride up after that butt kicking down there in Arizona.
You know what else was awesome? And maybe I was too busy to understand that it was all going to come together this way. But to see like Aaron and Erica Donald there, to see Torrey there, to see Coach Henney there.
Yeah.
Like it was part playoff game, part Super Bowl experience with the whole staff traveling, and part family reunion. Like that was family reunion under adverse circumstances.
That was the Ramley coming together. Special. And I'm really glad that this football team, Sean McVay and his group, made it stand up and go out there and play their best game. And it was a playoff game. We have to remind ourselves that was wild card weekend. There was a lot at stake for this football team outside of what was going on, and they got it done. They brought everything home. So just a special weekend. And a 9-sack day with AD up in the box. I never thought I'd see that. No way.
Yeah, on this edition of Between the Horns, we'll get our reflections on defense, on offense, and how it all applies to the next matchup, a rematch with the Philadelphia Eagles. But anecdotally, I want to react to something and see if you've observed this too. The roots of this organization in Los Angeles are growing deeper through moments like these. The branches are growing wider. I probably shouldn't admit that I was on the golf course recently. We're still in season, but nonetheless I was, and I was struck by the amount of Rams paraphernalia that I saw. Our local gas station has a Rams house flag outside its doors now. My kids at school, the excitement on Tuesday morning was palpable. Like the way they were talking and their classmates were talking about the Rams. This is still a generational project.
Yeah.
But it's happening.
I've been saying it for years since they've come back. What is the first part of the Rams on this? It's Los Angeles. So I could care less who you used to root for when there was no team here. But your team is here. This is your football team. So this is how it starts. When the team puts LA on its back. And just for a minute, for a weekend, just take your mind off what's going on for a second. This is how you build those deep roots with the fan base. the LA Rams is coming in defense of Los Angeles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is your team, your city, your community, your everything, and it's all right here. So 100% well said, JB.
Well, and it's the wins that are those signature moments, but it's also all the work that so many of us, especially the community team, are doing behind the scenes and off season, during season, holidays that I think really, really bring that home. Sean McVay has turned to saying his team and his Rams are built for this. I think we saw that on Monday night, that new ethos. What about the resiliency? But also, Stu, what about what is left in the emotional tank coming off that really high on Monday night?
Yeah, it's a great question, JB. I mean, how do you manage that? You come off such an emotionally charged game and, you know, a situation where in some cases coaches and players were, you know, personally affected by, you know, those things. How do you channel that into something that, you know, fuels you and motivates you even further without it getting you too high or, like you were talking about with kind of that, you know, emotional tank too low where, you know, you're running on close to empty in what's going to be a pivotal game?
Look, the fire's still going. There are people that are still without power, without their houses. This ain't over. So it was one game, sure, but it doesn't go away just because you won. You carry this forward. This is something that, like you said, galvanizes a community and galvanizes a football team. We have been looking for something. We have been talking about this football team for this entire season about seizing control of the game, and they need a spark. It seems like they found one. They have found one in they are carrying the city on their backs. And I think they are comfortable with that. When you talk about being built for it, what haven't they been through? Seriously, everything. International travel, playing on the East Coast in the early window. Everything they've been through. So, yeah, they are built for any environment you could throw at them, and they always seem to come out not on top, but at least they're attacking the challenge. So going to Philadelphia will be right in line with what they've already done.
You're touching on something there that I think is worth following up on. The 21 championship team had a shared purpose and urgency and identity that I've never seen in any other sports team that I've covered. I don't expect that to be replicated by the Rams or any other entity for the rest of my life. But I do think what you said is correct, that for a team this year, in 2024, that probably didn't have that shared purpose or motivation at the midway point, it's there now. And that matters, right?
Yeah, he talks about it. Sean McVay talks about being connected. It's so obvious when you go around the room post-game and they're all saying the same thing in different ways without being prompted. That is a connected football team. So not there yet, not done. The job is not done, but I'm glad he said built for anything because it's showing right now.
And to that point, JB, I think about in that 21 season when guys were like, I want to win it for Eric Weddle. I want to win it for Big Wit. I want to win it for Aaron Donald.
Yes.
Like you kind of get that same sense amongst this team too, where, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, like you can tell just with the way these guys interact and the camaraderie they have that they are truly such a selfless team that they want to win this thing for each other.
Yeah, the all-in label was misapplied. It was an F them pick sort of like they mortgaged their future.
Sounds good.
And we've had that conversation. But really where they were all in is all in for each other to lift that Lombardi trophy in a way that I think you're right. This group is coming together in that way. Now, whether they can accomplish the same feat, a lot to be accomplished there. And to take everyone behind the curtain a little bit, because we all work in the media space, like we study these matchups week to week. 7:50 a.m. Tuesday morning, the Philadelphia Eagles press release hit my inbox. And I'm like, coming off of a few hours of sleep, getting the kids to school. And it was almost like the opponent this week is rubbing it in your face. Like, we're ready. Can you get ready in time? Because it's a rush order. It's a short week. It's a long turnaround. Arizona, LA, Philadelphia.
They're all banged up. Everybody's banged up. Everybody's going through the same stuff right now. And, those games can't get here quick enough. But this is your Ivan Drago. This is the 600-pound elephant in the room. You got to go through Philadelphia to get to where you want to go. Mm-hmm. As far as being connected, I think the Rams might be the best team in the league. Now, are they the most talented? We're going to find out, because I think Philadelphia definitely fits that mold. So this game it'll take all 4 quarters to decide. So this connectivity, what we're talking about, will come to play and be tested in Philadelphia.
That being said, Monday night's win is a line that I think we've all crossed together. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, I don't know how anyone could argue that whatever happens from this point forward, 2024 was anything other than a resounding success. Has the year been a successful season for you if the Rams don't win another game?
What do you think?
I mean,
I don't want to be that guy. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say you hope that this team achieves more than it already has to this point. But when you consider how few people outside of the building gave them a shot when they were 1-4, dealing with a bunch of injuries, and just not thinking that they would be in the position they are now, I would say even just rebounding from that and reaching the postseason is like something to be proud of and something to celebrate. But again, I go back to not wanting that run to end by this weekend.
I feel that.
Keep going.
But you swept San Francisco.
Right.
That's a great season. You won the NFC West. That is a triumph. You went from 1-4, like you said, to hosting and winning a playoff game. I think for where this franchise and this group is, that's a great season. And now you've got house money. Now just go cut it loose in Philly and get greedy and go for more. I'm all for it.
To shut up a bunch of haters, sure. But I thought this was a championship or bust expectation because of how your team is constructed, especially at quarterback. You've only got so much time with Matthew Stafford, so you want to squeeze every drop out of his talent that you can. So I thought the goal was Lombardi's. So just to shut people up, great. You made the playoffs. You won a playoff game. Awesome. I'm with you. It is something to celebrate. And I'll go back to something that someone told me. Mike Martz told me his biggest regret as a coach was not celebrating the NFC Championship game. He treated that as a failure. He said that's wrong. So you should celebrate where you are. You should celebrate winning a wild card game, winning a playoff football game. But that ain't the only goal. The goal is the Lombardi.
Yeah.
The goal is your second. Since Stafford's been here, you're second in the McVay era.
We said Monday night that inevitably there are several Rams who are down to their last loss as Rams. That's life in the National Football League. We just said, let that not be tonight. Let that not be this week, because I think we're all touching around the same sentiment, which is I had forgotten just how addictive the NFL postseason can be. When you are privileged to be with a team that advances, you'll do anything for one more week on the job. One more week.
Absolutely. We study the same stat pages, and when you go through and your regular season stats can get very long, but those postseasons get very short. You know what I mean? Because there's only a few teams left, and this is exactly where you want to be. And to me, this is where you make stars. This is where legendary careers are born. This is where Hall of Fame careers are cemented or lost. Like you said, I've heard this before. I don't know if it's true, but it's funny. Sam Darnold lost money in that game. Well, that's what the playoffs do. You can also make money the other way. So it's big. It's everything. The air gets rarefied and very thin up here. But every team you face from here on out is good. And I said this before, this is where the all-pros live. If you want to know where the best players are playing, they're usually playing on these sort of days this time of year. So if you want to be one of those guys, be dominant.
It's so funny because we've spent the better part of the last 2 months talking about scenarios and what needs to happen. And now here you are in the Elite Eight, and there's not many options left. One of three things is going to happen for the Los Angeles Rams this weekend. They're going to lose. Their season is going to end, and that's that. Or they win. And if they win, they're going back to Detroit for round 3 against Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, and the Lions. And you know me, I've said all along, it feels like this season is destined to go through Detroit one more time. Or option 3, door 3 is if you win and both upsets happen, both lower seeded road teams win, you're going to be hosting a rookie quarterback and the Washington Commanders at SoFi Stadium in the NFC Championship game. From the Rams lens, we're down to the final 3 choices.
All you got to do is beat Philly.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do, beat Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. A lot of questions they present. But yeah, going back to Detroit would be very intriguing. Having the home game, that's the goal. Come on. That's what everybody wants. That would be something special, especially with what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Having that game here would be something special. But going back to Detroit one more time, it ain't over. It ain't over between these
There's only
teams
one
yet.
door that I don't want this team to walk through.
And that
is?
is?
Of those 3.
Oh, the first one. Okay.
Yeah. And we'll get to the Eagles
even talk about
and just
that.
what a monumental task that's going to be a little bit later on. But I think we'll also use our reflections from the win over the Vikings to spin the narrative forward in terms of our takeaways on both sides of the football and how they apply to the rematch with the Eagles.
He'd be going back to Detroit. I'm just saying. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just
you
saying.
and me both,
Yeah.
my friend.
Good one.
DeMarco and all of our years together has been right to point out that too often we start on offense. We're not going to make that mistake today, especially not
Finally gets his wish.
after the performance that Chris Shula and staff and players had on Monday night. Like, what a perfect mix of borrowing from the blueprint that the Lions set forward, I think, the week prior, but tailoring it to the ideal Rams ingredients.
You know, it's funny when you send all-out blitzes, and I like it. If you're up-tempo, Minnesota was up-tempo. But the one thing it does is it stifles your creativity up front as a defensive lineman because you're stuck to one gap, because you're bringing guys through other gaps. So you're taking away half of what they do. I'm glad Chris Shula resisted the urge to just copy that blueprint and just rely on what got you here. That defensive front, being creative, just wrecking shop, jumping up the field. If you show too much attention to the edge guys, and Verse and B. Young were bringing it, you're going to open yourself up for Fisk and Turner, and that is exactly what happened. They got after him up front. Every single time they adjusted their protection coverage, somebody else beat them up the field. So, and then you brought those timely blitzes that just got after Sam Darnold. It was a masterful game plan. It was a great job by the defensive line and the defensive unit getting after Sam Darnold and just being on the same page. The communication was outstanding. The pursuit was even better. The will, the want to get there, otherworldly. Like you said, playing for the city of LA, you could tell that front was playing for something deeper.
You talked about the money that Sam Darnold likely cost himself. And I think it's a fair question to wonder, like, what percentage of Monday night was him unspooling at the end of a Pro Bowl season and what percentage was what the Rams did. I honestly don't care.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters one iota because you got the job done.
The only thing I got steamed about was, and I heard that Minnesota's play-by-play guys were going after Sam Darnold. He's holding the ball too long. Okay, my first question is, why do you think he's holding it? It's a great plan. They're taking people away. He had no other option, and he got hit a bunch of times. Give the defense credit for discombobulating him. Don't just dump it on him for holding the football. There was a reason he looked that way, and it was that front getting after him.
I mean, team radio guys don't know what they're talking about. What about
Well,
Stu, what about the fact that they had 9 sacks and none of them came from the first round pick, who had his own highlight? We'll get there in a second, but none of them came from Jared Verse.
Yeah, it was I want to say it was 8 different players who had at least half a sack, which was the first time since 1982 when sacks officially became a stat that had been the case. So, just really getting after it. I thought it was the best example of everybody owning their roles and knowing where their ops were. Because when I talked to Kobe Turner about this earlier in the season, as far as just the strides the pass rush had made, and when they were really starting to find their groove in the middle of the year, and that was one of the things he pointed to, was just guys knowing when their ops are, learning how to play off of each other, and there's no better time for that to hit its peak than right now.
MVP, Kobe Turner. I just have to say that. The degree of difficulty to go from nose to pass rush threat, we can't talk about that enough. I need you to be the tough guy. I need you to be the spine of the defense, not move if they run the football. And then if they pass it, be active in the pass rush. And he did both with aplomb and get everybody lined up. Kobe Turner, I see you, man.
Well said. 2 questions about the Jared Verse scoop and score. First of all, where did Bobby Brown come from? Did he teleport to the end zone? How was he right there following the flip to celebrate?
Don't know. Trap door? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I saw any of those on the sideline when I was wandering around down their pregame, but
he teleported.
Impressive ability to just emerge in the frame.
Yeah.
And he timed it well, thankfully, not a penalty.
Yeah.
Is that true? Jared Verse was the fastest guy in the field? They clocked his MPH and he was the fastest guy out there?
Almost 20 miles per hour, I think, was his GPS
Oh, my
speed.
God, that's Jim Brown.
People forget, like we've talked about this with Jared. He was a skill position player in high school. I think he only had a couple of reps on defense at end before he became a collegiate. So.
Oh, you know what I was thinking? Oh, goal line. Let's go.
Did you hear what he was thinking?
What did he say?
So my other question was, what was your reaction to mic'd up where he goes right to McVay's like, I need a fade ball.
There you go.
Give
it to him.
In the midst of a wild card playoff
Absolutely.
game.
Give it to him. Sure.
We got to talk coverage too, because rush and coverage always go hand in hand. And what I loved about Monday night is, over the last couple of weeks, it's been Ahkello or Kobe. And how do you find that right combination? The other night, it was both. The land shark pulling a DeMarco Farr again with a pick and a sack.
Oh, nice. Getting in there. Look, I think all the corners, they played well. And there were a lot of challenges that Minnesota likes to try to throw at you. They want to get the ball deep. But I do love the discipline of the secondary. If I've got the left hip or the right hip of said receiver, they stayed with that hip and trusted their people over the top. Or if you're going to bracket, I'm going to do my job and make sure I focus on my responsibility and not worry about what's going on behind me. That is a defense that trusts each other. That's a secondary that understands what we're trying to get done and how we're trying to take away. And I'm trusting our guys are going to get there on the pass rush. And it worked out. But sending those guys on blitzes, the hit by Ahkello was, wow, good Lord. That's a big dude that unloaded on a quarterback and got the ball out. He didn't make him fumble. The ball shot out of there. Mm-hmm. So those corners, that the secondary as a whole played a great football game around what the front was.
I thought Quentin Lake had a sneaky good game. It's some timely moments.
The captain.
Stu, let me sell you on something, because DeMarco and MJD weren't having it. They were laughing me off. But I think Cam Kinchins made an adjustment on that 4th and long throw. And now that he's been through it, he pulled off of that and didn't intercept it intentionally.
I'd agree with you there.
Thank you, Stu.
You mean the one he dropped? You mean he purposely dropped it? Okay.
Yeah, he purposely dropped it.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
He knew they were going to get the ball out where they got it. Let's get to offense. And again, we kind of want to start to transition to how the plan, offense and defense, applies to Philadelphia. There's plenty of that to come. But where do you start in terms of what was a fast start and an effective game plan executed by Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay?
I would start with the quarterback, wouldn't you? He came out firing. He was, look, Minnesota, Brian Flores, they had a great plan, or at least their plan was to put as much pressure on Matthew Stafford as possible. How many times did they rush 7 or 6 trying to get pressure in Stafford's face? And they got home a few times with those stunts. Some of those guys were coming scot-free to Matthew Stafford. Problem is, the ball was gone already. So if you want to start with any praise on offense, start with him and then work your way out from there. But I'll tell you this, one thing about the offensive line. Life is better when Rob Havenstein is at right tackle. Oh my God, he's so big. He's so smart. His football IQ is off the charts. And he can just make a guy go cold with one punch. You know what I mean? So that just takes the front side away. Alard Jackson on the backside, great too. Up the middle, they got home a few times. Great job by the running backs with Matthew Stafford getting the ball out on time with velocity. That was the game for me.
Lest I forget, Rob was not there when the Rams played the Eagles. And I think you're right. Not only does he make right tackle better, I think he makes right guard and maybe even center a little bit better too.
Which makes your quarterback better. I can trust that side, just deal here. Oh my God, having him back was big.
I just love the start that Tyler Higbee got off to. I mean, I think he still ended, even though he left the game due to injury, I think he still finished as the team's leading receiver, I'm going to say, with those 5 catches for 58 yards. But just his involvement and him being back, it made me, feel grateful that, he's healthy and able to contribute in that way to this offense.
Rig is fine, right?
I don't know. Can't say fine, but I think we're hopefully trending in the right direction. I want to be optimistic. It seems like the Rams are optimistic.
I do know this. If he's breathing, he's playing.
Yeah. Good luck keeping him off that plane to Philadelphia. And he was one of them. Cooper was another. But the targets, one at the catch point. And that was one of our keys last week on this show is, Matthew's got to have that look in his eye. He's got to have one of those soul-snatching nights, and he did. But there were some balls that he trusted his targets to go out and get. Higbee did it early. Cooper did it on his one clutch target.
Oh, man, the one to Hunter Long was right there. And I think that's the one he needed. It was right there.
Yep.
It would have been a big play, but he was on the money with his throws, beating the defense to the spot with the football, but it was just his timing. And there was a play, oh my God, I wish I can remember the quarter. It was early in the football game, and it's so great. It's like dad coming down from upstairs. So you've got Bo Limmer and Steve Avila kind of call out the protections. Stafford walks up and goes, no, here, and then backs up. Kyron, you got him, motion, hike, boom, ball out. I mean, that's perfect. That's what I love about veteran quarterbacks. Nothing is left unchecked. And even if you call it, if he doesn't like it, he's going to redirect you. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. He is taking control of the huddle.
Speaking of Limmer, a couple things that I think we all agree have to be sharper this week for the Rams to have a chance to pull off this upset. The penalties piled up. And I think it's a 2-touchdown lead. It's a 14-0 lead, if not for that Limmer penalty. There was a hold on Jordan Whittington, which, whatever. I think that prevented the Rams from really putting the hammer down with their running game at that point. But penalties can't happen this week against the Eagles, and ball security too. Yeah. Like Matthew Stafford got away with one. That's who he is. We know him as the guy who was definitely throwing a pass there.
Brilliant.
Fortunate not to get called for either grounding or the scoop and score. And then look, Kyron, I know was like tackled in a very awkward position, but because his fumble against the Eagles is top of mind, I know for all of us, it was a great effort. It wasn't a letter perfect effort. This feels like the week where you do not have that margin for error that you enjoyed against the Vikings.
Well, and those penalties and self-inflicted mistakes overall were what I felt like really killed the momentum that the offense had started to get against the Eagles in the first matchup, and especially going into an environment like Lincoln Financial Field in Philly, like that's a situation where you cannot afford to have those, or you need to minimize them as much as possible.
Bo, good job.
Yeah,
I mean, look,
good job because it didn't cost.
It was just it was the crew that flagged that. I mean, should it have been a flag? It was close. The whistle blew right when he hit him. So be it. But I know they're trying to clean up stuff around the pile. But I love his aggression. He's not going to let you tag his guy without, him coming down to be protected. That's what you want in an offensive lineman.
To hear Sean McVay tell it seemed like the Rams dialed it down, scaled it back a little bit when they felt like they had firm game control. Is that a good thing that they maybe have more left in their inventory that they didn't show the Eagles?
I was going to ask you, does that show growth from Sean McVay? Like way back in 17, 18, when he first took the gig and he was pedal to the metal. I wonder if he would have slowed down on offense. I wonder if he would have even had thought to let's save some stuff for next week, because I thought that was very astute. That's very forward thinking. We got it. The pressure's all on them. I've got an 18-point lead. You've got to chase me down. Why would I show you or my next opponent anything until I have to? I thought that was very smart.
Are we ready for that next opponent? Any final thoughts on the Vikings and the win that was Monday, or should we transition?
Hell of a job. I thought they had a game plan, but I thought the Rams rose to the occasion. But we said, of all the opponents to pick, I thought Minnesota was the one you wanted to see, and I'm glad the Rams did what we thought they could do, go out and dominate the football game.
Yeah, I think that was the most advantageous matchup, especially for the defensive front when you consider that Christian Darrisaw, their starting left tackle, got injured in the first meeting between those two teams, and that clearly had an impact on their offensive line. Ended up working out.
Say it right. Verse hurt him. There you go.
Is the opposite of what you guys just said true this week, though? I mean, if that was as good a matchup, is this as bad a matchup? Not just for the Rams. The Eagles are a tough matchup, period. But football games aren't played on paper, right? Like depth charts don't decide outcomes, people do. And there's a reason why we're all getting on that flight Saturday to go see this game, because the Rams don't have to win 4 games in a best-of-7 series. Got to be better for 4 quarters.
I think the same applies to what they said going into the Minnesota game. Respect all, fear none. Philadelphia is tough, man. I mean, they've got a lot of good players. Saquon Barkley is arguably the best back in the league right now, or 1 or 2. Jalen Hurts, I feel, is elite. I think if you had Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts to start a football team, which guy wins the job? It depends on what offense you're using, because they're both great at what they do. So this will be a snootful, but I don't think the Eagles are unbeatable. And I still don't think we've seen the best of the Rams just yet. I think we're getting close. I think this win versus Minnesota is a step in the right direction, but if there was a best game to be played, you're going to need it this Sunday to beat the Eagles.
I mean, it's such a contrast. I think Minnesota was the worst offensive line in the playoff field. This is the best offensive line in the National Football League. Minnesota isn't great running the ball, isn't committed to running the ball. The
Philadelphia
Eagles,
is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're both elite defenses. That's a similarity that I see. But Minnesota is aged, opportunistic, super aggressive. Philadelphia is more poised and patient and young.
Oh, yeah.
And they're flying around and they're sticky in coverage.
You know, it's when you watch Minnesota's video and what they do and how they attack, and you're talking about Brian Flores and his up the field approach, his aggressive approach. If he had Philadelphia's talent, he wouldn't have to do all that. They can get after you with 4 and play coverage. That's what makes them special. That is a talented roster, a roster full of great players. But the thing I think that's right underneath all that, they are very combustible. I think, like you said, if you get into a game and you make this a 4-quarter battle, they could get frustrated. Bad things can happen. I think the more connected team will win this if you can get past the talent of it all, but easier said than done. But like I said, I don't think Philadelphia is unbeatable by a long shot. It's just you have to play your best game to beat them.
How close are you watching the weather?
I've checked the forecast a few times. I'll admit it.
Because?
Possibility of snow.
Now you think that impacts the game?
I think it could. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the Rams have shown they can commit to running the ball when needed, and I guess should conditions present themselves.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I do have a question. I mean, going back to San Fran, it was wet, it was cold, Stafford was off. New York Jets, it was cold. Stafford was a little off early until he figured it out. So is it weather or was it just rest? Because that guy looked different in Arizona. And he had the week off. So is it the cold affecting him at 36, 37 years old, or did he just need the rest? But I hope it was just the rest, because this is going to be it could be a mess of a football game as far as weather.
It can't control the weather. I don't know if you can control Saquon Barkley, but this is the portion in the show where I just literally wanted to turn it over to you and say, Coach Farr, how can you correct a 300-yard from scrimmage day? How can you make sure that house calls from 70-plus yards don't happen again?
Well, one, it's coming. He has that ability. So, and you have to have all 11 to the football. So I told you, it was Omar Spates and Christian Roseboom. They learned a lesson. I didn't think a running back can get from here all the way over there and then beat me down the field. Well, this guy can. So now you know. And I said this before on the radio. There have been games, and I was with Mike Jones, that we had our butts handed to us physically because we didn't know it was coming. We didn't see it coming. Had we gone into the locker room and came out and played the same game a half hour later, it would be totally different. So this is the second time around. You know what to expect. It's going to be a little bit tougher for Saquon Barkley to do exactly what he did before. That's not to say he can't chip away and beat you. But it won't be the same breakaway after breakaway because you've seen it, you understand it, you'll game plan against it.
Rams are a different defense, Stu, a little bit in personnel, but they're in temperament and commitment to stopping the run. They've been different since that Philadelphia game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it's like that's one of the games where they learned arguably some of their toughest lessons of the season, just in terms of missing one gap or one assignment, and how, especially against a backfield like that can cost you. They've made some considerable strides, I would say, since then, and put themselves in a better position to potentially, stop Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. But yeah, I mean that threat of hitting those home run plays is always going to be there. And, whatever lessons you learned, especially from, maintaining gap integrity and again, not missing assignments, better be applying.
And offensively too.
Yeah.
You don't want to be down 2 scores and send your defense out against Barkley in the fourth quarter. They're going to pound you out.
Yeah. He wears you down.
Yeah.
He does most of his damage after halftime. And so I think the question is, can you force the Eagles to play you on different terms? Like, their winning streak is largely built on playing games the way they want to play. Even last week, I mean, if that fumble recovery or not, I guess, goes the other way. What did you think, by the way?
I thought he flipped it out.
No. Opening kickoff, Packers and Eagles. I'm just saying, like, there's a real world scenario where if that doesn't happen, we could be having a completely different conversation right now. But to everyone's point, for two notoriously slow starting franchises, Philadelphia and Los Angeles, the score at the end of the first quarter is going to matter this week. Here's what I worry about a bit. The Eagles have been on a roll, and if Saquon doesn't slide at the end of last week's game, that probably looks like more of a blowout, and maybe there's not as much discontent. But the Eagles faithful are wary. Like, from what I've read and what I've heard, maybe even like a little disgruntled about how stuck in the mud this passing game is. Only one throw beyond 20 yards last week, and it was off of that fake tush push. So I do worry a little bit about that week-to-week adjustment. Like, are you going to have to at once suck up and sell out against the run and have to deal with Kellen Moore and company saying, all right, here's your play-action shot. We're making sure that we're getting to it early.
I mean, you're probably going to have to commit the extra guy to the box if you're going to try to take away Saquon Barkley. Like, we're just not going to allow him to beat us, which means now you're going one-on-one with their receivers. And that presents a whole another set of problems if you're not getting pass rush, the proper pass rush. Now, you mentioned the difference in offensive line. Like I said, this will be different. It's not going to be as easy to run over or through these guys. They are maulers up front, and they're going to keep you in front of them. But if you can find a way to stop the run without having to commit that extra body, then you've got something going. But that would require a superhuman effort of your front. And I think they're on that path, the way they left that football game. I thought Jared Verse, his comment at the end was so funny. It was a sack party and I wasn't invited. Love it. He's happy for everyone that got a sack, but he wants in on it too. So I think the front, the guys you need, Omar Spates, Christian Roseboom, I think they're playing their best ball right now. If you wanted to go nose-to-nose with Philly and try to stop Saquon without the extra guy, this is the week to do it.
I tell you who did not play well that day. A lot of the rookies, and especially a lot of the rookies on defense. Omar, you mentioned Cam Kinchins, Tyler Davis, Jared Verse, a little bit of Bo Limmer on offense. Like, this is a rookie redemption opportunity to show you're no longer a freshman, right? That in January here, that you're a different player and that you're a different unit than you were back in week 12. You know what's nice about this postseason path so far isn't it refreshing to have other teams' coaches being interviewed or having interview requests? Like last week it was Brian Flores, this week Kellen Moore. Like, we've become so accustomed to that for the Los Angeles Rams. It's nice to have your opponent coaches.
Oh, I was like, what are you about to tell me?
No.
Yeah, hold on. What are you about to drop on me right now? Okay, don't start that.
Yeah, the other thing I think going back to week 12 that bears mentioning here is that a couple of standouts on defense for the Eagles are both on injured reserve. Like, Brandon Graham was everywhere that night at SoFi, and then he just calmly tells the media in the postgame that he's done for the season with an injury, right?
Crazy.
So he's not around. And then last week it's their green dot linebacker, Nakobe Dean, who also had a phenomenal game against the Rams, now done for the year. How does that change things, Stu?
Yeah, it makes me pay that much closer attention to the middle of the defense and see what different ways the Rams may try to attack it, especially when you consider that they're still working through exactly who's going to replace Nakobe there. I know that Vic Fangio, when he was talking to Philadelphia reporters this week, mentioned rookie Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s name as somebody who could at least see more snaps. Not necessarily a guarantee that he would start, but and then I think Nicholas Morrow, if I'm not mistaken, was signed to the practice squad, which is a familiar name to them.
Can backfill some special team snaps for him.
Perhaps, yeah. And so there's an area to potentially exploit there, and that's no disrespect to whoever may step in to fill those shoes, but there's going to be a clear difference. There always is anytime you're missing a regular starter at a key position like that, especially in a key role like that with somebody who's the on-field signal caller for that unit.
Don't you guys equate Vic Fangio as like one of the biggest villains on the planet? Like Vic Fangio, Darth Vader, same guy. I mean, really. I mean,
is it the V?
The V is just like, oh my God, his name, Fang. It just, oh goodness. Every time you have something going, you seem to bump into him, and you got to figure that guy out.
I do have to point out that Devontae Smith did not play the Rams in the first round. He'll be out there this weekend. When they've had him and AJ, they've been virtually unbeatable.
That's what I mean. You're going to have to, you can't stack the box. You're going to go one-on-one with both guys. Oh, man. Wow. And
it's too soon to say one way or another for Ahkello Witherspoon, but we certainly hope that he can be out there because he's been on a heater recently, and he's the type of player that you need in this moment.
I keep hearing from his coaches that he is an absolute sponge, and, every rep he takes is one more than he's had before in his life, or whatever, how they said. He's still learning to play the position, and he's easily coachable. So he's getting nothing but better and more aggressive, which is what you love.
Before we get to keys to victory, did I forget anything? Any elements you want to talk through?
Did we talk about the special teams yet?
I knew there was something. Thank you to Marco.
Cardi coming up huge.
Good looking out. Thank you.
Cardi coming up huge. Ethan Evans. So Philly's got a great defense, right? So at some point, you're going to be punting backed up. This is the time to bombs away. Yeah, you've got to let it all hang out. And if you cross the 50 and it becomes now the end zone's in play, you've got to keep it out of the end zone. You've got to make Jalen Hurts and that offense go the long route. You can't give them easy first downs if you kick it short or out of bounds. So Ethan Evans must have a big day. And do not forget, watch that tape. Minnesota got home a few times. They should have blocked one, maybe two. So they're going to come and attack that again. That's got to be letter perfect. And, Josh Cardi, I think, has found his stride, or at least that from snap to hold to kick, they found their rhythm. So I'm glad he's hitting the stride at this time.
It's a good call out on the punt block. Also didn't like the call on Hummel going the other way. I thought that was whatever.
So 9 penalties instead of 10. How do you roughing the kicker with your back? Come on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But to your point about Ethan Evans, I think one of the untold elements to the Rams' turnaround and success is that they're top 5 in the NFL in average starting field position for their defense. To translate that, opponents are consistently faced with long fields because of what the Rams do with the football when they're on offense, the way they take care of it, but also thanks to Ethan and the punt unit.
Yeah, and he had 1 touchback, and he would have had 0 if he got the one to bounce back. It was a beautiful punt. He was on fire, but that protection has got to be a little bit better. You've got to help him out.
All right, keys to victory. Who wants it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to start with winning the battle at the line of scrimmage. As often as that gets used, it feels like it rings especially true this week when you think about, Rob Havenstein being available for this matchup after not being available for the last one, or the first one, I should say. Just the size on the interior of the Eagles' defensive line and what that means for the Rams' offensive line. And on the flip side, too, the defensive front coming off of a 9-sack game and some of the pressure that they were able to generate, how does that hold up against, what's arguably the best offensive line in the NFL? I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out. The success the Rams have on each side of the ball there, I think, is what determines this outcome.
I totally agree with that sentiment. Monday night felt like a chess match, and the Rams were the smarter team. If you beat them with brains on Monday against the Vikings, Sunday feels like you got to find a way to beat them with brawn. You got to be the tougher team. I don't know how you do that on the road in Philadelphia, but doesn't that seem like the path?
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to out physical. I guess for me, the obvious, like you said, control the line of scrimmage, protect Matthew Stafford, Kyren Williams. You can't put it on the deck. Ball security is number 1. And I think I would just go ahead and say I think they're going to do a pretty good job on Saquon Barkley. The second time around is going to be a little bit different. So when you do stop the run and you force this game onto Jalen Hurts, now this is my key to the game. You cannot let him jump out the window. If you got him in 3rd and whatever, and you have a chance to get off the field, you cannot let him scramble and pick up the first down and demoralize you. You have to find a way either to scramble him to the sideline or get him on the deck proper. You can't let Jalen Hurts control this with his legs.
Make him throw it through the snow.
Make him throw it.
Get out of the club.
Absolutely, 100%.
You've been the Kyren guy for much of the last month. I'm going to take your cue. What if, for all the talk of Saquon Barkley, and I get it, he had an MVP caliber season at running back. What if Kyren's impact on this game this weekend is greater, or is at least equivalent?
It'd be great if Kyren is pacing the offense, controlling the game, and the defense is getting off. That would be something funny. The Rams win, and Kyren Williams outrushes Saquon Barkley. What do you say to that then? What hate do you have for that then? That's something that could possibly happen if the defense steps up.
Because it goes hand in hand with combating a team that likes to play bully ball, likes to take the air out of the football. Nobody wins time of possession like the Philadelphia Eagles. Flip the script on them.
Can I shoot one more at you?
As many as you like.
You're not going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles if Cooper Kupp has 1 target.
Okay.
It's just not going to happen. 10 has to show up. He has to. You have to balance out this offense. It cannot be 17 only or that and a tight end and the running game. It's got to be both. You've got to have this offense clicking and functioning, and the only way that happens is if 10 shows up.
Yeah.
It can't be, you can't leave Philadelphia with 1 target or none.
You asked for it earlier, and I'm not superstitious.
Is that it?
But I'm stitious enough to keep eating chocolate. So
oh my gosh, look at you. Nice.
Take
Thank
one
you.
And pass it around.
Thank you very much. I'll take the big one. There you go. There you go. JB's chocolate. Love it.
I'll do a full candy bar if it gets us to the Super Bowl.
A full candy bar of our choosing? Let's go Rams.
Thank you guys for your time.
Yes, sir.
And your friendship. I mean
Always.
it when I say there's nothing I want more than to be in these seats again next week.
Sound like it's over. It ain't over.
No.
Thank you.
Quite the opposite.
Let's go.
That will do it for our divisional round edition of Between the Horns, always presented by your Southern California Toyota dealers. Of course, we continue to think about and to pray for those who've been affected by these wildfires, and especially our gratitude to those who combat them and who are supporting the victims in all of the various ways. These LAFD t-shirts and hats are still available at the ramsfanshop.com, all proceeds benefiting the LAFD Foundation and American Red Cross. All right, for DeMarco and Stu, I'm JB Long. The Rams, once 3 games under 500, now 3 wins away from lifting a Lombardi trophy by any means necessary.
Yes, sir.
A small sacrifice, a small price to pay. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Cannot wait to talk to you from Philadelphia.